Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Long Distance Work Life, the podcast where we attempt to help you thrive, survive, generally keep the weasels at bay when we are dealing with remote and hybrid work. My name is Wayne Turmel. I am the subject matter for remote work and the evolving workplace at the Kevin Eikenberry Group. My usual partner and producer, Marissa, is not here today. The good news is that means we have an interview with a fabulous guest, in this case, Sam Rosen from Deskpass, who is going to talk to us about the changes that digital work have wrought upon us over the last couple of years. And so, with no further ado, joining us from Chicago is Sam Rosen. Hi, Sam.
Hi, Wayne. Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you for being had. Hey, real quick, who are you and what's Deskpass and why do we care?
Good question. I'm Sam, and I run a little business called Deskpass. I've been in sort of the intersection of design and technology and where and how we work for about 15 years. So I started started a branding design agency and then opened the first co-working space in Chicago when there were about 300 in the whole world. Now there's 40, 50,000. And since then, I've been building tools and technology around this problem. So today, I work on Deskpass, and I'm the founder of Deskpass. And Deskpass is a tool that really connects individuals and companies with thousands and thousands of fantastic flexible workspaces, co-working spaces, places to book a desk for a day, meeting room for an hour, private office, all on demand. And that's what I do.
All right. So whenever anybody creates a technology or does anything like that, they're clearly trying to solve for a problem. So what was the problem you were trying to solve for with Deskpass?
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people in this space now come from finance and come from real estate. And I've always come from design and just trying to solve problems for humans. So coming across co-working really, really early, realized that was a really interesting solution to offer a place for people who want to work but necessarily don't work for the same company and just are looking for a space to get work done nearby. And I found that to be really interesting and a new problem. And then the other problem was, and I think this is more clear than ever, is offices have always been pretty empty. Offices are traditionally fairly underutilized, and it's one of the biggest asset classes in the world. So the opportunity to create something out of empty office space and share it with people so they can be happy and get good work done seemed like a good problem to solve.
Now, you said something a moment ago, which I've dealt with remote work for 25 years. I should have thought of this. And for some reason, I had a blinding flash of the obvious, which is it makes sense for real estate people to get involved in this because there's all these offices sitting empty. And how are we going to find uses for them? What, in your mind, is the difference between coming at it from a real estate standpoint, where it's desks and rooms and whatever, and a design standpoint?
I think the perspective we've always had is like, who's Wayne? Where does Wayne live? Who does he live with? Where can he focus and get work done? And how do you build a really brilliant environment for Wayne to get his best work done, irrespective of everything else? And I think often folks that come from real estate and finance are just, they're trying to put pegs in holes, right? Which is, there's empty office space, let's fill it up. And I think from the design perspective, I think for a long time, the experience for workers was really driven around, the bank that owns the building, the management company that manages the building, supporting the owner of the company that owns the company, and building a financial arrangement that works for all those parties, but less so like Wayne and like what works best for Wayne today. And I think that's where I come from, is like, how do you everyone has different needs as workers, depending on what company they work for, what role they're in. I got 2 little kiddos and live in the suburbs, like my kids have COVID today. Like my needs are different today than yesterday, right? And I think that's what I'm really interested is solving problems around the human and less around like XYZ Corp and and XYZ Bank.
Okay, so we've done our burn the patriarchy, death to bankers piece of this. So let's get really practical. A lot of people, I think of I'm either working at home or I'm in the office. What are some of the advantages of these kind of third spaces? Because to me, having other humans around is not the most beneficial piece of this. Um, but I have used spaces like this before. So, if somebody's thinking about when does this make sense, when does it not, what's the answer there?
Yeah, look, I think there's a lot of things that people will say about what makes a great workspace, but I think the underlying thing is proximity, distance, right? Like if I can't work from home because my kids are home or I don't have a suitable work environment, like trying to find a place close to me that's convenient to me where I don't have to commute or schlep or go. That's an underlying really important piece. I think other than that is not all, but most of these co-working spaces and flexible workspaces, they're like very purposefully built for work. So they tend to be really thoughtful work environments that are built and amenitized better than the average office. So, coffee, tea, events, different types of workspaces. I think these often are nicer workspaces than the average workspace. And then the last thing I'd say is I totally connect with what you're saying, which is I don't, like people need different things and they often need different things at different times. Like some days I need a quiet place to do a podcast or to work on a deck, right? And then some days I'm looking for community, I'm looking for inspiration, I want to be around other people. So the value of a network like Deskpass or just co-working spaces in general is you can get exactly what you're looking for typically, and not like a one-size-fits-all solution like your home or HQ.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always been helpful when I'm traveling because the hotel room is not always conducive to getting work done between, housekeeping banging on the door and bad Wi-Fi and, whatever.
Yeah, totally.
So that's when I've done it. As we move more and more to hybrid work and companies are shrinking their physical footprint and doing stuff, how, if I'm the CEO of a company, the notion of paying for a third space, if I'm already paying for an office, might be a bit of a tough sell. What would you tell that CEO?
Yeah. So I think the paradigm of office is changing in a fundamental way, right? Like one office for everybody to solve everybody's problems, I think is the old paradigm. And I think what we found there was those offices were generally pretty inefficient, generally underutilized, and expensive to maintain. I am at the office today. Like I love I believe in the whole business is selling office, right? So I think what we're seeing and the thesis that I really have in this space is this notion of office as an ecosystem. And we talk to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of companies that are thinking about this. Every company is different employees, different geographies, different requirements. But I think the prevailing trend that I have seen is companies are changing as leasing decisions are coming up, right? They're thinking about, okay, I have all this space. Are people coming to the office? How utilized is it? And they're not abandoning the office full sale. They're typically taking less space. They're reducing their size of their leased or owned real estate, and they're making it more efficient. They're saying, what is the purpose of this space? Is this purpose of this space to gather, to sell, to do R&D? And let's have fewer square feet, but let's make them better so people want to use them. And then not mandate that people are there all the time every day. And instead of saying you can work from the office or you can work from home, we're seeing companies become more inclusive and saying, we will meet you where you are. What do you need? And let me help support you with what you need. The value of a platform like Deskpass, and not to get salesy here, is it's on demand, pay as you go. So what companies are doing is they're not saying, here's another office we're paying for near your house. They're saying, work from where you need to get work done. And I've given you a $500 budget that if you want to use it, you can use any of these spaces and we'll pay for it. And then it gives companies the ability to learn, like, well, what do my employees really want? How are they really using space? And how should this help me address my workspace and strategy in the future?
Yeah, and there are times when you need to have a meeting, but you don't have a space. I mean, to pay 150 bucks for a meeting room for an hour that everybody can go to and then leave is probably not a bad investment in
Yeah, I'd
for
argue it's
certain types of meetings.
a lot less expensive to have meeting rooms when you need them than a meeting room in your building that's empty 90% of the 80% of the time, or whatever it might be. So I think people do find that, like, flexible solutions tend to be a lot more cost effective than owning, heating, maintaining space that's not used well.
What are some of the, for people that have never, taken advantage of these kinds of situations before, what are some of the ways people use them? Like, why would somebody use a space when, they have a home office, but
Yeah. So, I mean, post through COVID, like some of the big trends we've seen. So sales teams, right? Like bigger companies that have sales offices. So have like tens or hundreds of sales offices that were never that utilized. We're finding them divesting themselves from those spaces and saying, look, instead of having this office that's kind of far away from where you actually live, we're getting rid of it, but we're going to give you access to desks and meeting rooms and offices as you need. So we see a lot of meetings, right? Like sales meetings, regional meetings, quarterly meetings, client meetings, where people are leveraging the network on demand for that. And I think another big piece is, I think COVID helped companies realize that being co-located to where the office and HQ isn't as necessary as they thought. So they might have had employees that moved away from Chicago or wherever city you're in and now live in Denver or Vegas or wherever it might be, and want to offer something to them rather than saying sayonara, right? Or they're looking for talent and they're, instead of just casting a net that's around their geography, they're saying, let's just find great people irrespective of where they live. And then let's support them with what they need. And that's where we see a lot of use with, I think, these flexible workspaces and networks like ours.
As a CEO, what's the, wear your CEO hat for the moment and rejoin the patriarchy and
I'm in.
what is the discussion that you would have with your fellow CEOs? What are the two or three things that they really need to think about in terms of their offices, in terms of flexible spaces like Deskpass?
Yeah, I mean, I think like there is a huge cost savings advantage to leveraging networks like this and taking less fixed real estate and being more flexible. I think like that's a big piece. I think the other advantages to remote work is right, is talent, both acquiring new talent but also retaining great talent. Like, and this is, I think, that's what these tools are really great at. And the last thing I'd say is, some of the pushback you get in selling what we sell and talking to folks is they believe the best work gets done in the office. They believe in like the water cooler and getting people around the table is like how great work is done. And I am very much an advocate of in-person work and getting people together. I think that is where great work gets done. But I don't think it gets done there all the time. And I think that, like, companies that have been really successful at remote work, like NVIDIA, right? Like the fastest growing American company right now, like Atlassian. I mean, there's a million really strong examples of fully remote company or very hybrid companies. It's not about workspace. It's about culture, and it's about having the right tools and the right processes in place as an organization to like effectively communicate. And I think those companies aren't really great because they have the best co-working spaces or the best real estate strategy. It's that they've recognized what's happening in our labor markets and with like the future of the world and where things are trending, and they're building the right tools, the right culture, the right processes in-house to get the best result. And that's why those companies are thriving, not because of like the water cooler.
I'm going to leave you with one question, and this is just forget the fact that this is what you do for a living. As a CEO, when do you decide an in-person meeting is necessary and when do you not?
It's interesting because I think of it more as asynchronous meeting, like asynchronous work and synchronous work, right? What work doesn't need to be a meeting at all and is actually better if it's a post or it's a like in the tools. And then okay, which meetings should be synchronous, right? And I think okay, out of those meetings, which ones should be in person. And I think when there's a huge amount of work to get through, like it's a big meaty problem, I think that's when getting together really, really helps. And I think culturally, like when you feel like the culture you're building is struggling, like and a good pep or kind of shot in the arm is let's get people together and remember like we're humans, like we're not just these little people in these boxes, and like it's the little things outside of just the work of just like learning about your people you work with, building empathy around them. So I think like that's the kind of the framework that I like to use is like, does this have to be a meeting at all? And if it's a meeting, are we going to get a lot more squeeze by doing it in person?
Digging it. Thank you much, Sam Rosen, Deskpass. We will have links to Sam and Deskpass and all of that good stuff in our show notes. I am going to remove Sam from the meeting for just a moment while I talk to you. I remind you that if you enjoyed the show, if you continue to enjoy the show, please like and subscribe. You know how all this social media podcasting stuff works. I would urge you to check out Kevin and my new book, The Long Distance Leader. And I know you're saying, Wayne, The Long Distance Leader has been out for 6 years. Actually, this is a new updated edition. It is The Long Distance Leader Revised Rules for Remarkable Remote and Hybrid Leadership. We urge you to check that out. And you can, of course, get show notes, transcripts, past episodes, all that good stuff. Check out longdistanceworklife.com. If you have ideas for shows, if you have questions, comments, complaints, vicious personal attacks, you can find Marissa and I on LinkedIn or our email, which is here on the screen below my face for those of you enduring that. That's it. It's been another episode. Thank you so much for joining us on the Long Distance Work Life. Marissa will be back next week. And don't let the weasels get you down.